And welcome to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. And on tonight's show, President Biden says he won't exit the 2024 race. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court rules on Trump's presidential immunity, and Iran threatens war against Israel. Well, before we get into our top coverage for the day, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host who will be stepping in for Samuel Case. This is FISM's Ian Patrick. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you so much, Renata. It's a pleasure to be beside you again doing the news. And I have to say, I'm somewhat surprised and somewhat not that there's still so much coming out from this debate that happened last week. And we have a lot to cover on it today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we go with the first story. Former President Donald Trump lauded his big victory over Biden at a Virginia campaign rally on Friday. Trump told thousands that he won against a man who is looking to destroy our country.
We had a big victory against a man that really is looking to destroy our country. He's the worst. He's the most corrupt, the most incompetent president in the history of our country.
He later told rally-goers that Biden's problem is not his age, but his competence.
The question every voter should be asking themselves today is not whether Joe Biden can survive a 90-minute debate performance, but whether America can survive 4 more years of crooked Joe Biden in the White House.
President Biden won Virginia by 10% in 2020. However, recent polls revealed that state voters are still split evenly between both nominees. Republicans are now pushing for a Virginia upset in November.
But Biden and other Democrats seem to be rallying behind the president in spite of his rather disastrous debate performance. During a rally in North Carolina on Friday, Biden said that he would persevere through his candidacy.
I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
Biden actually made similar comments during fundraising events in New York and New Jersey over this past weekend. Speaking at one of these events, Biden promised to, quote, win this election. But other Democrats are still coming to Biden's defense as well. Among them, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. During an interview on CNN's State of the Union, Pelosi deflected questions of Biden's performance by instead focusing on former President Trump.
Well, what do they think about the other guy? Do they think that he has the integrity to be president after that performance? Let us not make a judgment about a presidency on one debate. Let's talk about what it means to people in their lives. And that's why you're not seeing much change in the polls on this.
That comment on just one debate is actually similar to comments made by former President Barack Obama, who also came to Biden's defense saying, quote, bad debate nights happen.
And it's not just Biden who doesn't want to give up. Apparently, his family is also pushing him to stay in the race. The Associated Press obtained opinions from anonymous sources saying that the Biden family still believes that Joe Biden is the best candidate to beat Trump. First Lady Jill Biden and Hunter Biden are the group's greatest advocates. Both of them have been close confidants and advisors of the president. Meanwhile, other Democrat supporters have rushed to Biden's defense as well. Democratic Representative James Clyburn from South Carolina said he didn't believe Biden would have issues leading for another 4 years. Pastor and Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock said he had a few Sundays where he thought he could have done a better job preaching, implying that the president just had an off day last week. The New York Times reports that the president's fate would probably not be decided at Camp David, where he is currently hunkering down, since people there could overhear confidential conversations regarding his presidency.
But the voters don't seem to be as convinced as Democrats and the Biden family in President Biden's ability to maintain. In fact, an increasing number of voters think that he should bow out of the competition altogether. This comes from a Morning Consult poll released after the debate itself. And although the poll results show that Biden didn't lose any immediate ground against Trump following the debate, many voters still want Biden replaced as the Democratic candidate. In fact, this includes a 47% plurality of Democrats, according to the poll. Meanwhile, 57% of those who watched the debate say that Trump beat Biden during the event. Unfortunately for Biden, those who watched the debate also have a somewhat negative opinion of him. So much so that 78% say that he is too old to be doing this, which represents a 12% increase from all voters who said the same just days before the debate even aired. But interestingly enough, despite all this data, between Biden and Trump, it seems that the current president still beats out the former by just 1% among polled voters.
Meanwhile, Republicans continue to voice concerns that President Biden is not mentally fit to lead America. House Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters on Friday that the presidential cabinet should consider invoking the 25th Amendment.
Well, there's a lot of people asking about the 25th invoking the 25th Amendment right now because this is an alarming situation. As I mentioned, our adversaries see the weakness in this White House as we all do. I take no pleasure in saying that. I think this is a very dangerous situation. But, unfortunately, it's not the House that gets to determine that. It's the cabinet under the Constitution, of course. It's the cabinet that makes that decision. I would ask the cabinet members to search their hearts.
On the same day, Congressman Chip Roy filed a resolution to compel Vice President Harris to bring the matter before the cabinet. In a letter to GOP senators, Tom Tillis called Biden a decent man who cares about the country, but is unfit to continue serving as the leader of the free world. Meanwhile, White House aides have made an alarming claim in an attempt to excuse the president's poor debate performance. They told Axios that he has difficulty functioning outside of a 6-hour daylight period. If reelected, Biden will be 86 by the end of his second term.
And finally, while we're still on the debate, others outside of politics responded to it, notable among them being Christian leaders, and specifically replied to comments on abortion. During the debate, Biden defended Roe v. Wade and said that he supports what he called the 3-trimester approach of the old ruling.
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state.
Trump, meanwhile, continued to assert that the decision should be left to the states, a position that he has taken in recent days and has called for other Republicans to take as well.
51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back, religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people.
But neither broached the topic in a way that satisfied Christians and pro-lifers. For example, an op-ed written by Southern Baptist Theological Seminary President Reverend Albert Mohler, highlighted the ways that, quote, both candidates failed, in his words. For Biden, Mohler says that the president was dishonest for refusing to say if he would sign a bill allowing for late-term abortions. According to Mohler, Biden would surely sign such a bill. And for Trump, meanwhile, Mohler says he wavered on the issue by leaving it just to states' jurisdiction. All the while, Live Action president and founder Lila Rose held similar views, criticizing both presidents and flat out saying that, quote, abortion is unconstitutional. And we continue with some international coverage when we come back from this upcoming break, so stay tuned.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
On January 21st, 1824, a baby boy was born in Clarksburg, Virginia. His name was Thomas Jackson, and during the American Civil War, he would become the second most famous general of the Confederate Army after General Robert E. Lee. Most people do not recognize him by his given name, but many do know him by his legendary nickname, Stonewall Jackson. To watch more episodes of A Moment in History, go to FISM.tv.
Tragically, and all too often, a young mother in an unplanned pregnancy is in crisis. You can be there for her by giving a life-changing ultrasound through Preborn. Seeing her baby on ultrasound is a game changer, doubling the chances she will choose life from 40% to 80%. For only $28 a month, less than $1 a day, you can show a mom her baby on ultrasound.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's see how international adversaries reacted to the Biden-Trump debate. Of course, China, Russia, and Iran all criticized the U.S. Strategic military intelligence analyst Rebecca Koffler said Putin believes that regardless of who wins, the U.S. will descend into chaos after the elections, which will lead to victory for Russia. China was also critical of the debate. The state news outlet Global Times labeled the debate the most chaotic presidential debate ever and said it was like a reality show. China was especially critical of Trump blaming Beijing for the pandemic and the current American economy. Iran did not comment much on the debate itself since the country is holding its own elections now, but Middle East expert Lisa Daftari said the lackluster debate will interest America's rivals. She added, quote, "We're looking at many precarious global crises right now. Of course, any of these current crises may find more momentum between now and the election."
And speaking of our adversaries worldwide, American bases apparently across Europe heightened their state of alert over the weekend, citing apparent fears of an act of terrorism. At European Command headquarters in Stuttgart, Germany, for example, the Army garrison issued an alert. The force protection condition level was raised to Charlie level until further notice. And according to the U.S. Army, the Charlie level is applied, quote, when an incident occurs or intelligence is received indicating some form of terrorist action or targeting against personnel or facilities is likely. Charlie is the second highest threat level that these bases can issue. In fact, one U.S. official told CNN that this level hasn't been seen in at least 10 years and said that it usually means there's an active, reliable threat. But despite this dramatic uptick in protection and alertness at these bases, the U.S. European Command did not comment on what actually caused the level to be raised.
Meanwhile, Iran is threatening Israel with an obliterating war should the Jewish nation launch an all-out attack against Hezbollah. In a post on X, Iran said that all options are on the table. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz responded by saying, quote, "A regime that threatens destruction deserves to be destroyed." Tensions at the northern border of Israel escalated in recent months, leading Israel to switch much of its attention from Gaza to Iran. According to Fox News, one hospital in the city of Haifa, located in the north, is getting ready to face a potential attack from Iran.
So it is a strategic location next to the port and next to other issues that we have, things that we have facilities around here. And we know that if there will be a war, this area will be probably attacked by missiles.
The hospital is preparing to take care of 2,000 patients underground. However, the mayor of Haifa added that people in Israel should keep a cool head and listen to authorities.
My message is stay calm, trust that we know what to do. We experienced it in the Second Lebanese War, and follow the instructions.
And while we're in that area of the world, let's look at some updates from the war in Gaza. Israeli forces advanced further into North Gazan city and the southern city of Rafah yesterday. The Israeli military reported killing several Hamas gunmen and even locating weapons within a United Nations school in one of the largest neighborhoods within Gaza City. Residents there accused the Israeli soldiers of killing 6 Palestinians and destroying homes in the process. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to assert his commitment to destroying Hamas in totality, as the terror group says that it will continue its fight against Israel. And in some related news, the Biden administration has sent a massive amount of munitions to Israel since the beginning of the war. And this is according to U.S. officials who are briefed on an updated shipment log. These weapons include over 10,000 highly destructive 2,000-pound bombs and even thousands of Hellfire missiles. Of course, all of this comes after Netanyahu accused Washington of withholding weapon aid.
Meanwhile, President Biden's temporary pier in Gaza is going away again, and it's not clear when it will be rebuilt. U.S. forces towed pieces of the $230 million pier to Ashdod in Israel last week, ahead of high seas that could damage it. This now makes for the third time the pier has been disconnected since it was built in mid-May. But the Pentagon tried to circumvent rumors that the pier will remain permanently dismantled.
As high sea states are impacting the operability of the pier, that's why it's being removed. When the commander decides that it is the right time to reinstall that pier, we'll keep you updated on that.
So it may not go back.
As of right now, the intention is to continue to get aid into Gaza by any means necessary. That includes the pier, airdrops, and of course, as we've always said with the pier, it is meant to be temporary. It is not the long-term solution or solve for land routes.
During the past 7 days that the dock was operational, ships unloaded about 10 million pounds of aid from Cyprus. However, delivery trucks are not picking up those shipments. The Pentagon admitted that the marshalling yard is nearing capacity.
And finally, let's take a look at France's elections, where voters headed to the polls yesterday for the first round of snap elections. A risky call for President Emmanuel Macron that appears to have backfired. According to exit polls, the nationalist populist party, known as the National Rally, is currently leading those elections with 33% of the vote. Voter turnout also approached 70% for the first round, which marks the highest amount in 40 years for the nation. It's a stinging rebuke to the currently centrist administration, who finished third in the first round of voting. Macron called for new parliament elections after the National Rally Party made huge gains in the larger European Parliament. But no party has the clear majority yet needed to take power. The second round of voting will be held on Sunday. And we'll return with some more coverage from the U.S., but first, let's go to FISM's Seth Udinsky for a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, in the annals of history, there are several places, people, and events that have reached legendary status. We've talked about many of them on this show, even as many people question the legitimacy of their existence in the first place. One of these stories places an alleged ancient island paradise somewhere in the great ocean and possibly once existed as a hotbed of precious metals, with many stories alleging the island was teeming with gold. That is, until its faithful and mysterious disappearance sometime in the ancient world. This island, whether mere legend or a true historical paradise, has captured the fancy of historians for thousands of years. That would be the mythical island of Atlantis. Now, Atlantis' first big appearance on the pages of history was in the writings of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who described it as a mighty ancient island kingdom teeming with natural resources near the Strait of Gibraltar in the Atlantic Ocean, right where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Mediterranean. Now, according to Plato's writings, and this was somewhere in the 3rd or 4th century BC, the island kingdom existed some 900 years before him, pegging its existence around the year 9300 BC. The island was prosperous, teeming with gold, but according to Plato, the kingdom sank into the ocean and disappeared when its inhabitants, powerful ancient aristocrats, became exceedingly wicked. Now, since Plato's day, the island became a legend of epic proportions, especially in Europe, when in the later Middle Ages, Europeans discovered the works of Plato, or rather rediscovered them, and believed to be able to find this island. Now, this is in part the foundation for the intense seeking of gold in the New World that many Europeans exhibited in the 16th century during the Age of Exploration, with many of them searching for an Atlantis-like paradise in the New World, or even the lost island of Atlantis itself. Now, this begs the question, did Atlantis really exist? Well, my opinion might surprise you. I believe there's a good chance that it did. Now, we have to make some clarifiers, of course. I believe the Earth is only several thousand years younger than what Plato put forth, meaning he was off by a few millennia in his research. Nevertheless, I want you to notice the legend that Plato describes is an island full of wicked, powerful people who, in their wickedness, were sucked into the heart of the sea and lost forever. Does that sound familiar to you? It should. The legend of Atlantis can absolutely be justified to line up with the biblical account of the Noahic flood, where because of the thoughts and inclinations of mankind being only evil all the time, God sent a worldwide flood to destroy them. In the Platonic legend, Atlantis sinks into the ocean. Did it really sink into the ocean, or did it, by the sovereign hand of Almighty God, get obliterated by an oceanic flood? In Noah's day, there were many ancient kingdoms who were powerful and wicked, and all of them were swallowed up by the sea of God's wrath. Who's to say that the ancient Atlantis was not one of these? Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Do you know what you are supporting when you purchase mutual funds and stocks? Think about it. When you invest in a company, you make a decision to support the things that that company supports. And it may not be things that you agree with. Financial Issues is a ministry teaching people like you how to invest biblically, responsibly, keeping your investments clear of companies that may support an ungodly agenda. Learn more by going to financialissues.org. Financialissues.org.
Emmy was in a bad relationship when she found out she was pregnant. Her boyfriend told her to get an abortion, which she seriously considered. Now, Emmy knew that if she got an abortion, a part of her would be broken. So Emmy went to a preborn center in need of guidance. They were able to put every fear at ease and let her know it was going to be okay. And because of preborn, Emmy's little boy is here. She couldn't imagine life without him. Preborn clinics introduce moms in crisis to their babies through ultrasound while providing hope, love, and the gospel in action. Would you join Preborn in helping more moms choose life? For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds and help rescue 5 babies from abortion. To donate, dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com. That's preborn.com.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Ian Patrick. Let's continue with some big news coming out of the Supreme Court today. The court ruled that Donald Trump cannot be prosecuted for any actions within his constitutional powers as president. That ruling was 6-3, with all conservatives in favor and all 3 liberal justices dissenting. The majority opinion, written by Chief Justice John Roberts, said that, quote, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. And he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. It should be noted, however, that the court did say that Trump is not given immunity for any private acts that he did while in office. But still, this ruling will impact a sweeping case brought against the former president by special counsel Jack Smith regarding Trump's activity before and on January 6, 2020. Trump himself hailed the ruling in a social media post, writing on Truth Social, quote, big win for our Constitution and democracy.
And another new ruling from the Supreme Court on Friday ended the 40-year-old decision that allowed regulatory agencies to interpret the law. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that regulatory agencies do not have broad authority to decide what regulatory laws mean. In 1984, the court ruled in what was known as the Chevron case that when legislation is unclear, regulators are allowed to decide what the statutes intend. In writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts said, quote, courts must exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority. The ruling was opposed strongly by dissenting Justice Elena Kagan, who called the ruling, quote, yet another example of the court's resolve to roll back agency authority despite congressional direction to the contrary. The ruling came just a day after the court removed certain enforcement powers from the Securities and Exchange Commission.
And let's move from the judicial branch back to the executive branch, where White House officials announced over the weekend that millions of Americans will have their student loans frozen as part of the president's student debt relief program. Department of Education officials said in a statement that individuals who have signed up for the Saving on a Valuable Education program, known shorthand as the SAVE plan, will not owe any payments on their debts. The announcement comes after federal judges in both Missouri and Kansas temporarily froze parts of the SAVE plan. Lawsuits filed by the two Republican-led states I just mentioned argued that the administration is overstepping its authority and actually trying to find an alternate way to forgive student loan debt. Under the SAFE plan, borrowers pay a reduced amount for their student loan debt, and the timeline for individuals to receive full debt cancellation is actually shortened.
Meanwhile, in some other cultural news, yesterday a New York City Pride parade got out of control as anti-Israel activists and Pride parade attendees clashed with each other. According to the New York Post, multiple fights broke out in Washington Square Park amid curious onlookers who whipped out their phones to record the violence. Now, as you can see on the screen, it was absolute mayhem. The Libs of TikTok video shows two men in a fistfight going at each other until one falls to the ground. The camera pans away as a woman in the crowd starts kicking the man on the ground. Meanwhile, two other women also get into a fight, which a third woman tries to break up. Finally, another woman is seen wiping blood off her face. And even when violence wasn't an issue, people were seen engaging in plenty of R-rated activities in the park. Police finally ordered people to leave when the park was closing, which led to further confrontations. It's unclear if any people have been arrested at the event.
And let's continue in news within the culture, where it seems that the Biden administration has finally issued an opinion on transgender surgeries, specifically for minors. In a letter sent to reporters this week, Biden administration officials claimed that the White House is opposed to this procedure as it relates to minors, but it does still support the procedure for adults. Now, the recent opposition to surgeries for minors seemingly contradicts previous statements that have actually come from the president himself. For example, President Biden called a Florida law which banned such surgeries for minors, quote, terrible, and President Biden supported a current lawsuit that the DOJ filed against the state of Tennessee, which had recently banned transgender surgeries, also for minors. But still, the response comes after the New York Times contacted the White House on the issue. Specifically, the Times asked about an interaction between an international transgender organization and U.S. Department of Health Assistant Secretary Admiral Rachel Levine. That request was to remove age limits for transgender surgeries and treatments, supposedly for the benefit of transgender youth.
And lastly, the Iowa Supreme Court overrode a temporary injunction against the state's heartbeat law on Friday. Planned Parenthood filed a lawsuit against the state's heartbeat law, which prompted a lower court to pause the legislation. But the state Supreme Court ended up ruling 4-3 to protect unborn babies from abortion after 6 weeks. Justice Matthew McDermott wrote the majority opinion, which said that abortion is not a fundamental right under the state's constitution. Therefore, the fetal heartbeat statute is rationally related to the state's legitimate interest in protecting unborn life. The law is now in effect, which means that abortions are prohibited in most cases, except when a mother's life is in danger and in cases of rape or incest. And that's certainly good news, and that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content. And for any updates until our next show, follow us on social media at FISM News or download the FISM app on your smartphone. Thank you so much, God bless, and we'll see you here tomorrow.